There's a difference between deciding to do something and actually doing it. Diep decided to find her mother. That was the easy part. But standing at the bus station with a ticket to Hatay in her hand,
this is really happening.
That's when it became real.
I
Because
have to do
once you get on that bus,
There's no
going
turning
back. Once you knock on that door, you can't unknow what you find. Some journeys change you before you even arrive. This is the story of what happened when Diep finally went looking for the woman who left her 20 years ago, and what she discovered about forgiveness, truth, and the complicated love between mothers and daughters. Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't finding answers. It's being brave enough to ask the questions. The bus to Hatay leaves at 6 in the morning. Diep barely slept the night before. She kept getting up to check her bag, her phone, the piece of paper with Mrs. Land's number on it. James drove her to the station while it was still dark out. Nye stayed home with James's mother, still asleep when they left. At the terminal, James carries her small overnight bag. "You don't have to do this," he says. "Not for the first time. I know. You can turn around right now. No one would blame you." Diep looks at him. "I would blame me." They stand together in the early morning cold, watching other passengers arrive. Old women with baskets of vegetables, young men going to work in the city, families traveling together. Everyone has somewhere to go. Everyone has their own story. "Call me when you get there," James says. "I will. And if it's too much, if you need me, I can be on the next bus." Diep reaches up and touches his face. "I'll be okay. Promise?" "I promise to try." The bus driver starts calling for passengers to board. James pulls her close. "I'm proud of you," he whispers. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know that..." Diep nods against his chest, not trusting her voice. Then she picks up her bag and gets on the bus. She finds a window seat near the back and watches James through the glass. He stands there until the bus pulls away, getting smaller and smaller until she can't see him anymore. The bus ride takes 3 hours. Diep watches the city give way to countryside. Rice fields, small villages, water buffalo standing in shallow ponds. This is the landscape her mother has been living in all these years. While Diep was in the city building a life, her mother was here. The thought makes her feel strange, untethered. An older woman sitting next to her offers fruit from her bag. "Going to Hatay?" she asks. "Yes." "Family there?" Diep hesitates. "My mother. I'm going to see my mother." The woman smiles. "That's good. Mothers and daughters should not be apart too long." If only she knew. They arrive in Hatay just after 9. The bus station is small. Just a concrete shelter and a few food stalls. Nothing like the big terminal in the city. Diep steps off the bus and stands there for a moment, overwhelmed. Her mother is somewhere in this town. Right now. Maybe at the market. Maybe at home. Maybe walking down one of these streets. She pulls out her phone and calls Mrs. Lan. The phone rings twice before someone answers. "Way? Mrs. Lan? This is Diep. James's mother gave me your number." "Oh, yes, yes. I've been expecting your call. Are you in Hatay?" "I just arrived at the bus station." "Good. Stay there. I will come get you. I'm just down the street. 10 minutes. Thank you." Diep waits on a bench, watching people come and go. Her hands are shaking. She clasps them together in her lap. What if her mother is at the market right now? What if Mrs. Lon takes her there and they run into her by accident? No, that's not how this should happen. It needs to be planned, intentional. A small woman with gray hair approaches. She's carrying a basket and wearing a faded blue aubaba. Diep? Diep stands. Mrs. Lon. The woman's face breaks into a smile. You look just like her. Just like your mother when she was young. Diep doesn't know what to say to that. Mrs. Lon gestures to a nearby tea shop. Come, let's sit and talk before anything else. They settle at a small table. Mrs. Lon orders tea for both of them. How much do you know? Mrs. Lon asks gently. Not much. Just that my mother is alive. That she's here. Mrs. Lon nods slowly. What do you want to know? Everything. Why she left. Why she never came back. Why she... Diep's voice cracks. Why she let me think she was dead. Mrs. Lon pours the tea carefully. Those are good questions. But I think maybe you should ask her yourself. I don't know if I can. You came all this way. That was the hard part already. Does she know I'm here? That I'm looking for her? No. I didn't tell her. I thought that should be your choice. When and how to approach her. Diep wraps her hands around the warm teacup. Tell me about her. What she's like now. Mrs. Lon considers this. She is quiet, keeps to herself mostly. She sells vegetables at the market twice a week. The rest of the time she stays home. Is she happy? Mrs. Lon's expression saddens. I don't think your mother has been happy in a long time. She carries sadness with her. You can see it in her eyes. Good, Diep says before she can stop herself. Then immediately feels guilty. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... No, I understand. She hurt you. It's natural to feel angry. They sit in silence for a moment. Can I see her house? Diep asks. Not to go inside. Just, I want to see where she lives. Mrs. Lon nods. Of course. It's not far from here. They finish their tea and start walking. Hatay is smaller than Diep expected. The streets are narrow. Most buildings are only 2 or 3 stories. Everyone seems to know everyone else. Mrs. Lon leads her down a side street, then another. This area is very quiet, Mrs. Lon explains. Mostly older people. Your mother likes it because no one bothers her. They turn a corner, and Mrs. Lon stops. That one, she says, pointing to a small house with faded yellow paint. That's where she lives. Diep stares at it. It's simple. 1 story, a small porch with potted plants, a wooden door that needs repainting. Behind that door is her mother, the woman who left her, the woman who has been alive all this time. Is she home now? Diep whispers. I don't know. Sometimes she goes to the market in the morning. Sometimes she stays home. Diep takes a step closer, then another. She can see now that the plants on the porch are carefully tended. Someone waters them regularly, cares for them. Her mother cares for these plants. The thought makes something twist in Diep's chest. What should I do? She asks Mrs. Lan. That depends. What do you want to happen? Diep closes her eyes. I want to knock on that door. I want to see her face when she realizes who I am. I want answers. Then knock. But I'm terrified. Mrs. Lan puts a gentle hand on Diep's arm. Being terrified and being brave are not opposites. Sometimes they are the same thing. Diep stands on the street staring at the yellow house. She came all this way, got on a bus at dawn, left her husband and daughter behind, crossed half the country to get here, and now she can't make her feet move those last 20 steps. Do you want me to come with you? Mrs. Lan asks. No, I need to do this alone. I'll wait here then. Take your time. Diep takes a deep breath, then another. She thinks about Nai, about what she told her daughter before leaving. If you find her, tell her about me. She thinks about James saying he's proud of her. She thinks about 20 years of wondering, and she walks to the door. Her hand shakes as she raises it to knock. Before she can, the door opens, and there she is. Her mother. Older. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a simple house dress. Lines around her eyes that weren't there before, but unmistakably, her mother. They stare at each other. Diep watches as recognition dawns on her mother's face, watches her mother's expression shift from confusion to shock to something that might be fear. Diep, her mother whispers. Hearing her name and her mother's voice after 20 years breaks something open in Diep. Hi, Mama. Her mother's hand goes to her mouth. Tears spring immediately to her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them moves. Then her mother steps back, gesturing weakly. Come in. Please. Come inside. Diep follows her into the small house. It's simply furnished. A table, 2 chairs, a sleeping mat in the corner, a small kitchen area. Everything is clean but worn. This is where her mother has been living. This small, quiet space. Her mother hurries to make tea, her hands shaking so badly she nearly drops the cups. Sit, she says, not looking at Diep. I'll make tea. Mama, you don't have to. Please, let me make tea. So Diep sits and waits while her mother busies herself with the tea things. She watches her mother's movements, the way she still tilts her head when she concentrates, the way she arranges things just so. Some things don't change. Finally, her mother sets down 2 cups of tea and sits across from Diep. They look at each other over the steam. I didn't know you were coming, her mother says. Mrs. Lan didn't tell me. I asked her not to. I wasn't sure I would actually come until I was here. Her mother nods. How did you find me? James's mother. She came to Ha Tai looking. She talked to people who remembered you. James. My husband. Her mother's eyes widen slightly. You're married. For 8 years now. And children. A daughter. Nai. She's 6. Her mother's face crumples. I have a granddaughter. Yes. The silence stretches between them. Diep has so many questions. They've been building inside her for 20 years. But now, sitting here, she doesn't know where to start. Her mother speaks first. I know you must have questions, and I know I owe you answers. Why? Diep asks simply. Why did you leave? Her mother closes her eyes. I was scared. Scared of what? Of everything. Of being a mother. Of failing you. Of... She trails off. Now there was a man. Someone I thought I loved. He said he would take care of us. Take us away from the city. Give us a better life. So you left with him. Yes, I was young and stupid, and I believed him. And then what happened? Her mother's hands twist in her lap. He left. After a few months, he just left, and I was here in Hatay with no money, no way to get back, and so much shame. You could have come home. Could I? How could I face you after what I did? After choosing a man over my own daughter? So instead, you just disappeared? Let me think you were dead? Her mother flinches. I thought about coming back. Every day for the first year. I thought about it, but the longer I stayed away, the harder it became. And then I heard you were with a family, that you were being taken care of. I thought maybe you were better off without me. Diep feels anger rising in her chest. That wasn't your decision to make. I know. I spent 20 years wondering, 20 years thinking you were dead. Do you know what that does to a person? I'm sorry. Her mother's voice breaks. I'm so sorry, Diep. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Diep stands up. She needs to move, needs to breathe. She walks to the window and looks out at the quiet street behind her. She can hear her mother crying softly. Part of Diep wants to comfort her. Part of her wants to leave and never come back. But mostly, she just feels tired. I came here for answers, Diep says, and now I have them. But they don't make me feel any better. No, I suppose they wouldn't. Diep turns back to face her mother. I have a good life now. A husband who loves me. A daughter who is smart and funny and kind. I built something good out of all that pain you left me with. Her mother nods. Tears streaming down her face. I'm glad. Truly. But I also have this hole inside me. This place where a mother should be. And I don't know if meeting you today fills that hole or makes it bigger. What can I do? Her mother asks desperately. Tell me what to do. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything you can do. They stand there in the small house. Two women connected by blood and separated by choices made long ago. Diep picks up her bag. I need to go. Her mother stands quickly. Will you come back? Diep pauses at the door. I don't know. Maybe. I need time to think about everything. Can I know about my granddaughter? About Nai? Diep pulls out her phone. She finds a recent photo of Nai smiling at the park. She shows it to her mother. Her mother stares at the image. Fresh tears falling. She's beautiful. She is. She has your eyes. And yours. Diep puts her phone away. I'll be in touch. I don't know when, but I will. Her mother nods, unable to speak. Diep walks out of the house and back to where Mrs. Lan is waiting. How did it go? Mrs. Lan asks gently. I don't know yet. They walk back to the bus station in silence. On the bus ride home, Diep stares out the window. She found her mother, got her answers, saw where she lives and heard her apology, and now she has to figure out what to do with all of it. Here's what I learned that day. Some wounds don't heal just because you understand where they came from. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't automatically mean you forgive them. But it's a start. Diep didn't forgive her mother that day in Hatay. Maybe she never will completely. But she took the first step. She faced the woman who abandoned her. She listened to the truth. And sometimes, that's all you can do. The rest takes time.